This episode of the Brilliance Plus Passion podcast is brought to you by the Podcast Reach System. Are you ready to exponentially reach more profitable customers? Launching and hosting your own show is your proven best solution for networking, client attraction, and establishing your celebrity expert brand. Visit www.podcastreachsystem.com and claim your rightful place as the leading star of your industry so you make a difference for your community, market, and audience. Welcome to the Brilliance Plus Passion podcast. Join us as we celebrate entrepreneurs, business creators, and brilliant minds who reveal what they are doing to make the world a better place by being part of it. Be sure to visit our website at www.brilliancepluspassion.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now sit back, lean in, tune in, get your notepad and 2 pens ready, and let's get started.
My name is Adam Homey. I am your host, and I am once again honored by your decision to tune in and invest in yourself today. Here at the Brilliance Plus Passion Project, what we do is we highlight change makers and innovators who make the world a better place by being part of it and through their contributions to it. And today, we're going to have a very interesting conversation with somebody I recently met through social media, through a mutual friend, part of how the entire world of podcasting works. His name is Evan Johnson. You can learn more about him by looking in the show notes, but I'll tell you very, very briefly that he believes, as do I, that genuine, meaningful relationships are the core of any good business. And this refreshing, authentic approach has enabled him to impact thousands of people through helping coaches, leaders, and other heart-centered entrepreneurs start and maintain successful podcasts or grow their existing shows, as well as through his own podcast, The Path to Podcast Success. Nowadays, you'll find him interviewing new guests for his podcast and traveling, all while serving clients and building relationships on his path to podcast success. So here you have Evan Johnson with the Path to Podcast Success. You have me with the Podcast Reach System. What is so cool about podcasting is there is a piece of my business and a piece of Evan's businesses where we actually overlap and in a way compete, although with slightly different methodologies. However, a focus of his business is something that I don't do. In the ordinary world, without the venue of podcasting or trying to run a podcast through your business website where you're also selling your stuff, us doing this interview might not be possible because it would create market confusion and friction through a direct competitive conversation. However, because I embrace the power of podcasting through the Brilliance Plus Passion Project, it facilitates these. So consider this. If you are looking for reasons not to start a podcast, here's what you're missing out on. The opportunity to create referral relationships where somebody who's in a similar line of business does stuff you don't do and vice versa. The opportunity to share overload if one of you gets extremely busy or just runs out of capacity. And also those cases where you may have a great prospect who's awesome, but they're just not great for you, but they might be great for somebody else. Those are 3 things you miss out on if you don't take the step of launching your podcast where you have the playing field to speak with people who do what you do. Just wanted to share that little lesson. And with that, Evan, it's so great to have you here today.
It is very, very exciting to be here. I always love talking with fellow podcasters, especially, with you. Like you said, our businesses are similar, but the thing you focus on and the thing I focus on are different enough and they work together really well. So I'm excited about this.
Exactly. So overall, in your own words, how does what you do make the world a better place for your clients and the world at large?
I help my clients and in the world of podcasting use podcasts to spread their message. So a big part about me and the clients I bring on is I want to make sure the people I'm working with have a positive, impactful, powerful message, as I do, because that's what a podcast does. I mean, someone's getting they're impacting, hundreds of thousands of people every week or whatever with their message. And if I'm the one through my podcast production to make that happen, then I consider that my impact as well. So
Yeah.
I change the world through how they're changing the world, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'd like to bring up for our listeners also reason number 4. When you have a peer network of people who do what you do, and after all, many of you are joining masterminds with other people who do the same work that you do. Let's say that I got stumped on a really challenging question with one of my clients. Well, what if I were to, go into my DM box and ask Evan for a moment of his time, or vice versa? We can support each other in creating wealth across the board. There's abundance, and there's enough for everybody. So, specifically, Evan, what is it that you do?
I help people start and maintain successful podcasts. So how we differ, right, is that I take over the production where my clients will record an episode like we're doing now. They're going to drop that raw file in Google Drive, and they forget about it until it's published. Audio, video, show notes, graphic design, scheduling, publishing, resources like audiograms. I do all of that. Of course, I help them in the startup process if they're new to podcasting, because those are the two people. I either help someone start a new show or I take over the production of an existing show. If I'm helping someone start a new show and they're not familiar with podcasting, I'll help them go through that process, like, if they need help, what is their name going to be, best interview practices, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not my bread and butter. My bread and butter is taking over the production so they can focus on just doing the interviewing, which pretty much everyone agrees is the most fun part anyway.
Exactly. Oh yeah. I mean, that's most of what I do with both my podcasts. Is I approve people who want to be on. I interview them. That's it. Everything else is handled by somebody else.
Yep. Exactly. So I'm that person for the entrepreneurs I work with.
And that's as it should be. So in your experience, what are a few of the most common questions, like the FAQs, that people have in general when they're asking about what you do?
Right. So besides the main one, which is just, well, why should I start a podcast? The more specific ones that I get a lot of is like, how do I make time for a podcast? Because a lot of entrepreneurs are busy and they're like, well, how should my time? One of them, however, and I'm sure you get this as well, the main one by far, how do I monetize a podcast?
Bingo! I recently released 3 special reports. One is about how to recession-proof your business with a podcast. Another is about how to avoid podcast purgatory by not making some of the mistakes that people make when launching their podcast. It causes them to become the proverbial tree falling in the forest and nobody's around. And the third one is innovative ways to monetize your podcast that they're not talking about. Want to guess which one got the most opt-ins, most leads, most engagements?
Yeah, I think I have
monetization. Yes, we all want to make money. And I've made a lot of money with the Brilliance and Passion Project. I'll just come right out and say it. I mean, this is actually my number one money maker. Smart people have already figured that out, but I'll just say it. So what are a few questions you wish people would ask?
I wish people would ask more about if they should focus on interviewing, because that's how I've been able to, and I can dive into this later if you want me to, but like that's my kind of unique way to monetize a podcast is through guests, interviewing, and creating relationships. So I wish more people ask me about that. How should I focus on interviewing? How do I really conduct a 10 out of 10 interview, right? And then, how do I use that in podcasting to kind of grow my business more, right? So I wish I'd get a little bit more detailed or specific or more creative with the questions related to guests and interviewing and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So just a little peek behind the curtain here. I have another podcast called the Business Creators Radio Show. They're hour-long episodes. They're audio only, so we can drink whatever the hell we want. And they take the form of mastermind conversations. Now, all of our guests are required to submit suggested interview questions. It's not because I'm necessarily going to just go down. So question number 1, question number 2, question number 3. But here's what those questions do. They let me know where that guest's brilliance and passion lies, so I can make sure to shine a spotlight on it. I can make sure, if the conversation truly takes on a life of its own, to make sure all that stuff gets in somehow. I'll have it right in front of me the entire time. And for those cases where, and sometimes you will have a guest who just is either just not all that talkative, or maybe they're just having a bad day, but they didn't reschedule the appointment. Having that structure can help you get them through it and help them be magnificent.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Having the
Yeah.
structure really
Yeah.
helps, and just knowing what you're doing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I keep my podcasts not as structured as yours, but when you're skilled at bringing out questions and keeping a conversation going and steering it, then you can survive, with different levels of of scripting, I guess you could say.
Oh yeah. 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 And see, part of this just comes with practice. I've been doing this for over 10 years. I know when somebody, whether it's this podcast or my other one, I know within 5 seconds that I'm logging into the pre-interview green room exactly what kind of guest I have. I can tell by how they say hello.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And so I use that first couple minutes before we hit the record button to calibrate my approach to how we're going to make them look magnificent.
Yep, exactly. It takes some practice. I mean, that's kind of a rule with podcasting. Your first
Yeah.
episodes are going to be kind of rough, but when you're at, episode 100, episode 200,
Mhm.
you're going to be way better. I mean, I had no
Yeah.
interviewing experience, no speaking experience before I started my show. I started it. Now, I feel like I'm very good at interviewing and being interviewed, but back then, ugh, no.
Well, I can tell you it's happened time and time for me again. I've had people who joined our Elite Podcast Reach System program where we launched your podcast, and they went into it with trepidation and hesitation, like, "Am I going to be a good interviewer?" Oh, thank God you have that series of training videos on how to do interviews. It's yeah, that's great, but believe me, you are going to be a great interviewer. Then they record their first few episodes and go back and watch them. They say, "Damn, I'm good." People have it in them more than they give themselves credit for. And I think,
Oh
unfortunately, that's
yeah.
part of our social programming that we're supposed to self deprecate more than necessary in order to prove that we're decent people.
Exactly. People just need to remember it's a conversation. You have conversations all day, every day. Just do that on the podcast. I've had people in my personal life, unrelated to business, who've checked out my podcast to see what I talk about when I talk about
Mhm.
my work. And they're like,
Yep.
wow, you sound the exact same as you do like in real life. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm just being myself.
Yeah, I'm gonna borrow something. My client and friend Dan Janal, who's also one of our reachers, by the way,
Yeah.
his brand is teaching people how to write your book in a flash. And what part of his marketing is that when you publish your book, you you can finally tell your mom what you do for a living in a way that she'll understand it. And it's the weirdest thing. And I found this out that my dad had become one of my podcast followers. He didn't tell me. He just started watching them, and he became
Yeah,
a
yeah.
devotee. And being able to have these conversations with him now, where he actually gets what I do, after over a decade of trying to explain it to him and not being able to get through because he has a different set of experiences, comes from a different
Yeah.
time, and just doesn't quite understand the industry as it is because he worked in a different time. He's long since
Yeah.
retired, but just getting to see this and understand some of the messaging behind what we do and our approach is been it's been quite interesting. It's like, finally, my parents understand that there's really something here. Yes,
Yeah. Every
which
Christmas
means
isn't just pure confusion.
and which means no more stupid questions at family gatherings.
Yeah.
That's
Yep, there
that
you
that's the
go.
other. You know what I'm talking about.
I
Now,
do
now,
know what
now,
you're
now
talking
the
about.
conversations are a lot more fun. So if for our listeners, if you want to solve that problem, launch a podcast. Trust me. All right,
Yep.
let's shift gears. We're about halfway through here. And this is the part where we like to ask a few things that just help our listeners get to know you more as a person. Because I believe that,
Yeah.
I agree with Bob Berg that all things being equal, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. I add to that and say that most importantly, people do business with people they see as people. And that's what we try and bring out to this experience. First question, what would people who know you be surprised to learn about you?
I'm gonna answer that in just a sec, but I want to quickly highlight your shout out to Bob Berg,
Yep.
The Go Giver, favorite
Yep.
book related to business. So I
Mhm.
just had to say that. But as far as what people don't know about me in the world of business, anyway, the people I meet in situations like this, people usually don't know that I am a trained musician, and I was actually on the path to becoming a professional musician until I decided to focus on business full time instead. So that's kind
Mhm.
of a fun fact. Is
Yep.
I'm a musician.
I'd like to introduce you to Princess Alessandra Francesca. She is a
Heck yeah.
she is a performing musician. Is her side hustle.
Oh my goodness.
She she
Okay, a
she
fellow
she, us-
musician
she
then.
usually does her concerts at 3 o'clock in the morning when her otherwise heaping full food bowl has a tiny little spot in the middle of it.
Right. I mean, when
Yeah.
else would you want to do your concert? I mean, 3 a.m.
Yeah.
is probably the best time.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So what do you hope people say about you when you're not around to hear it?
I hope people. I mean, what I hope people say about me is, at least as far as character traits go. I mean, I try to be as kind as I can, and
Yeah.
I have really stepped into living a life very passionately, which is something I very much lacked growing up. So
Yeah.
hopefully, people have seen that, recognized it, and maybe they talk about it.
Exactly. If you could go back in time and change one thing you've done, one thing you've experienced, one thing that's happened, what would it be and why?
I found that question very, very interesting when I was thinking about my answer to this. And honestly, no matter how much I thought about it, frankly, I mean, I will not change a single thing, good or bad, because it led me to who I am today and where I am today in my life.
Yep. If the Brilliance Plus Passion podcast was playing Fast Money like on the Family Feud, number one answer would be I wouldn't change a damn thing.
Yep, I'm sure
So,
I get a lot of the same answers to my questions too. And it's
yep.
like, I knew it'd be the one you get the most, but I
Mhm.
was like, I mean, you get it the most for a reason. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Let's go to question number 8 and see if you also get number 1 on that one. What famous person, alive or dead, would you like to meet, and what question would you ask them?
Now, I know the context of a podcast being related to business and podcasting. I'm probably expected to say someone in the world of business. So if I
No,
had
you're
to say
not.
someone in the world of business, I'd probably say Bob Berg. But frankly,
Mhm.
just my true, just heartfelt answer to your question is I would absolutely love to talk to J.R.R. Tolkien, who is the author of The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings is one of the most impactful book series I've ever
Mhm.
read, and I'd love to hear his take on how just absolutely mind-blowingly creative. Because I mean, he created a whole language, and then he wanted to create a world to give context to that language, and the language was like his Elvish language in the books, and then the context was Lord of the Rings, the books. So I just would love to talk to him about all of that.
We get a lot of interesting answers. I know I did these interviews back to back once, and one guest said Donald Trump, and the next one said Joe Biden. But the number one answer is Jesus Christ.
Oh,
I
really?
swear it's Jesus. So,
Wow.
yeah. What motivates and inspires you to keep going when you're having a tough time or facing a challenge?
Honestly, what really keeps me motivated is the fact that what I value the most in my life is freedom. That's why I'm an entrepreneur. That's what inspired me to be an entrepreneur, so that I can do what I want when I want to do it. Obviously, I have to put in the work, but at the same time, it's work I can schedule around my life. So what keeps me motivated is knowing that if I fail and have to get a quote real job,
Uh
then I
huh.
lose that freedom. I'm trapped 9 to 5 Monday through Friday for the rest of my life, and that is something I cannot do.
I hear you. I hear you. So, final question. And in a moment, I know you have an invitation for our listeners. I will share that on your behalf. But in general, aside from taking you up on your invitation, what is one action you would urge our listeners to take as soon as they finish listening to us within the next 2 minutes?
I would encourage people to think about who your ideal clients are. If you have a service-based business, who's your
Mm-hmm.
ideal client? Who do you want to talk to? Who would it be powerful to you if you could get on an hour call with them? And could you turn that person into a client? If so, start interviewing them for your podcast and then launch those interviews and as a podcast. Do that because
Mm-hmm.
there you go. It's pretty much a cheat code into getting an hour of anyone's time.
Yeah, thank you for making my case for me. Free strategy sessions suck. They have up to a 50% no-show rate,
Ah,
and people often will be excited to speak with the person who's offering a free strategy session, but will turn it down simply because they know that somewhere in there is an offer, and
yeah,
they're
of
just
course. The
not
strategy
in a place
session
to
is just a
receive the
sales
offer.
pitch.
Yeah. Also think about this. Let's say that you are looking to pitch people. Well, if let's say you and I became Facebook friends recently. So let's
Yeah.
say that we had become Facebook friends, and 10 seconds later, I'm in your inbox telling you about the glories and joys of podcasting. And would you like to hop on a Zoom real quick? You're gonna say, "Oh, another fucking salesman."
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I
Now,
don't hop on
now,
Zooms real quick.
right now, let's say that my first approach, and this actually turned out to be the first approach. You and I were introduced by Eli Delaney, who's also been on the show, and he was suggesting you guys should chat with each other. And I'm thinking, no, I don't slurp virtual coffee. Get on my show, and you hopped right on, right? So now, let's say 6 months later, I have something for you, or you have something for me, and we slide into the DMs and say, "Hey, man, want to check in with you? By the way, I'm doing this, and it's XYZ ABC. Here's the link. You interested?" Well, now rather than being a salesperson, you're a friend making a friend aware of an opportunity. That's the
Exactly.
frame shift.
The podcast gets the relationship started off on an incredible foot. I mean, I have gotten new clients from I record my episode with someone, and then the post-interview chat, I tell them what I do, and they're interested. And then
The
I'm like,
green
well,
room
let's
is
have
where the
another
green grows.
conversation about this. Exactly. And it's great because it just, even though that we had exchanged like 2 messages on Facebook, I asked them to come on the podcast. They agreed. I sent them my calendar link. They came on the podcast. We had an incredible conversation. Boom, new client. I mean, it's ridiculous how I mean, it really is kind of like a cheat sheet to getting really, really quality relationships. And even if they don't become a client, you still get a great interview out of it. So like worst case scenario is still pretty best case, you know. And
you got great content. All right, so here's the invitation for those of you who are out walking, driving, jogging, and not on our website or not on our companion YouTube channel. The URL, and I love Evan's taste in website URLs, by the way, is path-to-podcastsuccess.com. That's path-to-podcastsuccess.com. So check that out and see the similarities and differences between what Evan and I do, and particularly if you're looking for a resource that can guide you through the post-production, the posting, and a lot of the back office stuff after you complete the interview. I believe he's a great resource for you to check out. So I say that one more time, path-to-podcastsuccess.com, right there in the notes. So Evan, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been an honor, and believe me, an education.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I always love being on the other side of the mic.
Thank you for tuning into the Brilliance Plus Passion podcast, where we celebrate entrepreneurs, business creators, and brilliant minds who are making a difference for their community, market, and audience. Remember to visit our website at www.brilliancepluspassion.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Brilliance Plus Passion podcast.